digital transformation, should you invest in it? And if so, does it make sense? And that's a question we all have, and APIs play a role in that. But to look at the bigger picture, today we say hello to Tim Bottke, author of Digital Transformation, Payday, professor at SDA Bocconi in Milano, and strategy partner at Deloitte. Hey, Tim, how are you doing? Thanks for joining.
Hi, Eric. Thanks for the invitation. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this conversation with you. So you published a book recently that's called Digital Transformation Payday, and it caught my eye personally because it was the only one, as far as I know, that really looked at data in terms of how digital transformation really creates value in organizations. So oftentimes people just claim, like, do these 3 things, do these 5 things, but it's never quite clear why exactly. And you really, you crunch a lot of data. You had a whole Ph.D. out of this, which is pretty cool. So tell us a little bit about the process of why you started writing the book, what's in it, and what is interesting for people who are reading through it.
So that's a very interesting question to start with. And actually, as always,
jumping right in.
I wish I could say it was all part of the bigger plan, but reality was different, as we all know. So the origin of this whole research was a client meeting with a longtime client, a CEO of a publicly listed company. And he asked me, Tim, we both know what we need to do in this company. We need to replace all legacy. We need to change all ways of working. It will cost $500 million or more. But I also have another option. And the other option is I just wear jeans and trainers from tomorrow. I'll ask my investor relations team to put digital API and whatever, a few buzzwords, 20 times in the quarterly and annual reports. And I invest 20 million, go to Berlin, the German city of coolness, and buy 1 or 2 startups and found some incubator, etc. So if you have proof, and I mean proof, that the first option will create more shareholder value and make me as a CEO happier in the short time frame I will stay here, just a few more years before I move on, then I do option A. If not, I'll likely do option B.
Get the sneakers and go to Berlin. That's not a bad option.
And I had no answer. So I'm usually saying what I think and what I know, so I'm not pretending. So I said, look, I cannot answer. I'm not sure whether there's any proof. And then I went out of the room and said, wow, that was not the kind of meeting you want as an advisor. And then I said, okay, I'm going to just quickly find the solution. There was none. Then I had a small internal project set up saying, quickly, we need an answer. I didn't like the results. There was no proper answer. And then I said, okay, now I'm going to do it myself. It cannot be so difficult. Over the weekend, I'll do it. I failed terribly. It was very clear that it would require really deep, extended research. And at least in a short search, I couldn't find any. And then I thought, okay, now I always wanted to go back into research. So it's a good coincidence. I will have to call him, say, look, the answer will take a little more time, actually.
It'll be a week or 2.
And then I started really going into research. And then I really found that by I don't know, almost by miracle, as soon as the word digital appeared on this planet, empirical research related to that was almost like stopping, because there was endless research about tech value, etc. But in digital, as you said, the 5 success factors of digital transformation, 10 reasons of failure, do this, do agile, and it's all good content in there. I'm joking now, but it's actually not answering the question board and shareholders have, which is actually, look, I'm going to spend hundreds of millions. Will I ever see my money back?
Mm-hmm.
And
it's kind of a legitimate question, right?
Yes. and then what's even more interesting is, and then you start researching further, and then you find 70% of digital transformations fail. Okay, then
Yeah.
And you look into it and you say, okay, it was a questionnaire where a set of hundreds of executives was asked, and they said, look, 70% fail. It was never defined what does success and failure mean. Then you say, wow, that's not the risk profile one would want. Then you look into where is this number coming from. Then it's usually saying, look, based on a research of X, Y, Z, 100 of executives, it doesn't define what success means. It doesn't define what failure means.
Yep. So we didn't like it in the end. Yeah.
And then you say, okay, maybe that's just the wrong article. Then you look further. Then you find, oh no, 85% fail. Same problem, 90% fail. And it's all cross-referencing to the fact that, okay, the majority seems to fail. And then we are back to the shareholder expectations. So if I would say, Eric, can you give me 100,000 euros from your bank account? Likelihood that you'll get your money back is below 30%, but I'll do it in an agile way. So relax, and that's kind of the situation. And given the fact that the majority of these fail and that shareholders already know today, so it's not the new hype anymore. So they've seen programs failing. They given these facts, they very carefully select where they see value and where not. And then coming back to the CEO's question, what I would call digital washing is no longer working.
That's a good term. Yes.
Yes.
I think I'll steal that term. That's great.
So there's a lot of, we talk a lot about greenwashing, but there's also the second scenario the CEO described was digital washing. So you can pretend. Mm-hmm. And there's still a lot of pretending out there, but it's less and less accepted by shareholders because they really ask the question, not only do I get my money back, but the key question of my book is it's not about digital in the end. It's about, do you have a strategy to win in the marketplace? And what do you need for this strategy to succeed? And luckily, digital gives you additional tools, but nothing more, nothing less. So if you don't know what to do, any tool on this planet is useless. And that's kind of the key message in the book. And that also then is resulting from the research where you can, and the research we've built on top of that shareholders need to understand that what you do is linked to a proper strategy and that technology is not just for itself. And that you also never neglect that you actually still have, let's wait what ChatGPT will be doing, you still have people working in your company. So if you do not change how they behave, no technology will ever help you.
Yeah. And that's actually one of my favorite quotes when I read through your book. At some point, probably not verbatim, but you wrote something like, there is no such thing as a digital strategy, right? Yes. There's a strategy and it should cover digital, of course, but it's not a separate thing. And I like that a lot because I see kind of the same thing, right? Where people, the dots are not really properly connected. And if you're not doing that, then it's much more likely that you will end up in that big bucket of those who yes.
And it's even worse. You have, just imagine if you look into the Gartner hype cycle or so, every single trend in there, you have some organizations I see which then say, okay, let's call Eric because we need an API strategy. Okay. And then let's call Mike.
I've had that happening to me literally. It's like, we want one. And then I tell them, you should write your own.
And by the way, what is it? So it's means to an end. So, and ideally it will help tremendously. But if you do not know what business purpose is behind, or at least how that will make you better vis-a-vis competition, then it's useless. And I have there's this funny story where just imagine two companies, both understanding, wow, our user experience is not as good as it should be because Amazon is better. Both doing research, what Amazon is doing, both asking their customers what they should be doing, both coming out with the same requirements because they more or less are competing on the same customers, both selecting the same best of breed technologies to fix the problem, both finding out that customization budget is not there, so they need to take out of the box whatever they can, and both ending up with a totally comparable solution, which is still worse than Amazon, but but it's not differentiating in any way, and you're
Yep.
just a few euros poorer after the
Yeah, and
process.
probably it wasn't cheap either. And
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, and to be honest, like a lot of what I read in your book, I liked it a lot because it really was a good foundation. So I mean, I haven't put it in the way that you put it, but I always try to tell people, look, you need to understand why you're doing all of this. Otherwise, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And you also need to make sure that people actually start behaving that way. So the pillars, as I called them, were like strategy and technology and organization. You call those a little bit differently. But so one of the follow-up articles that you co-authored, I think, with Tim Smith, also identified like this trifecta of different things, and I really like that because to me it's a very nice way of demonstrating like all of these things are necessary but none of them alone will actually help
Yes.
you. Can you tell us a little bit about that trifecta? I think that's, for me, it was one of the really great takeaways from your work.
Yeah, that's what we've built based on the research of the book, and we thought, how can we take that further? So what we have done, and again, it was all data-based, so thousands of companies, millions of pages of annual reports, and then using natural language processing to see what companies say. So that was before ChatGPT, but we are now seeing how we can even use things like that, and there were a few interesting outcomes which are obvious somehow when you think about them, but funny enough, hardly any company is using this obvious thinking, because you can also measure based on the data. If it's so obvious, why doesn't everyone do it? And you really wonder, and everyone you talk to says, yeah, it's obvious, but then say, look, but it's only 30% of companies we looked into do this. So what is it? So different things. So number one is it creates value if you clearly articulate what kind of strategy or digital strategy, but what I mean is strategy you have, and shareholders need to understand what you want to achieve with the process. The other lever is your strategy actually linked to the technologies you talk about? So in reports, you can really see that when you read them and you find random technology, blah,
just
blah,
sprinkled over.
then it's one scenario. The other scenario is, look, we want to attack in this market, in this segment. And to do that, we use this cloud platform and we introduce whatever, you know? And then the third part, and that's something which was surprising in one way, but not surprising in the other way, was that when people and companies just talk about change, but do not have a strategy behind and do not link their strategy to technology, then it's actually value destroying. It's also not surprising, because I always make this joke. You can be the best agile, you can have the best agile operating model, high speed, quick time to market. But if you don't know where to run, then people will either run randomly or they run against the wall. And when they just ask customers, they will never differentiate, coming back to the story which I said before, from competition in the way, because customers don't know what differentiation really means if they just copy it from an experience which they've already seen. So, and what the trifecta means, real value creation comes from having all these three. Value destruction comes if you only do change, and you're better in the middle somewhere. If you don't have money or resources to do all three, then probably not select just change, like let's all be agile, but work on technology or on strategy separately. I think that's the summary of the article. And the good thing is, I think it's the first one, as far as we know, where this was really empirical data based.
Yeah.
And
that's I mean, to me, you know, that's why I said, right, like that's why I liked it so much, because also when I talked about it, I mean, I just kind of made it up, so to speak. Right? but then seeing it, you know, it's like, okay, and now, like you say, right, like so many companies, and you can just prove it basically by looking at the data. That's super interesting to me. And then, like, did you have any visions what else you might be working on, like on that foundation that you've now built, with your like initial analysis? I would imagine, that there are many other things that you could look into as well.
There are many ideas, and some we're already working on. So what will come out next is actually using all these insights, and now we start asking clients and executives, based on the results, how do they measure digital value, and what problems do they have? So now, having a empirical foundation, you can have much better questionnaires, other than saying, what was your major success factor for digital transformation, or this kind of nonsense. The other thing, which is tougher, but obviously we are trying, but now the professor in me is kind of struggling with this. Obviously, some people now would want, like, just to pick an extreme example, saying, look, if you can do this with natural language processing, if you can read every report, why can you also show the link of API to market cap? And then I'm saying, I can show many things, but whether they are then correct is another story, because obviously in a dream world, you would become very granular now, saying, okay, API creates more value than robotics, but that just doesn't work number wise, and statistically it's nonsense. But there are some ways where, in some things, what we try with the cloud space, you can show some things. If it's big enough, it's all a question of how many data points you have, because if you don't have enough, you can just leave it. But these are the two streams. So customer research, very interesting stuff coming out in the next weeks. And the cloud research is already out to be seen. Maybe you can get some inspiration, because I think the key thing I've seen for technical executives and communities is that there's a clear understanding, also given the crisis we currently face, that budgets will not be endless. And that also means that pure technology arguments are not saving your projects. So everyone needs to understand and have good arguments for value creation in what they do. And that's what most CIOs, for example, are interested in when I discuss with them the book and the findings of the book. And on the other hand, I also have an interesting discussion with the business side of organizations, where I tell them, look, you cannot say, I don't care what API is, because that's the CIOs or the technology geeks problem. It's either something which will help you in your strategy, or will be an element which matters, and then you need to understand, or not. But the judgment you have to make based on knowledge, So it's kind of, and that's the real change in the digital transformation world, that I think that very soon there will no longer be, I know business and I know technology. I think the best and most successful ones know both.
Yeah, you have like this kind of, I call it, like technological literacy, that at least you know the terms to a certain depth. I think that's definitely something that you will need more and more, right? And also know how to execute on it. It's not just saying we need this, but also, okay, but how do we make it work? Because just saying we need this doesn't just make it happen magically.
No. Right? It's certainly when your budget is cut, then, but we need this is not a good argument, in my experience.
That too. Okay, Tim, I think there are very interesting things ahead of us, maybe coming from you. But even for now, we talked about a variety of things. So we talked about your book, of course, which is available on paper and on audio. I'll link to this article. I think we discussed a couple other resources that I will link from this video. Do you have any closing words for us?
Oh, closing words is always tough, but I think I love these discussions. So, and I can just encourage everyone who has questions, or who is interested in discussing further, just comment on LinkedIn or wherever. because I'm learning every day. I think that's the great fun. The book is one thing, but I think this whole notion of value creation has started a new discussion thread, which I just love. That's usually the highlight of my week. So any comments, read the book, listen to the book, read the articles, and just give feedback. That's what I like.
Good. Okay, great. So yes, please do that. And thanks everybody for tuning in. And thanks again, Tim, for being here. And with that, we're done for today. So I hope you liked it. If you did it, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing. And with that, have a great day and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Eric.